Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Jenks Daly, supervising producer at Late Night, and this is Late Night Lit. Few improv groups have fostered as much talent as that of Boom Chicago, which has been entertaining audiences abroad for more than 3 decades. On this episode of Late Night Lit, we're joined by Andrew Moskos and Pep Rosenfeld, the co-founders of Boom Chicago, who have written a new book about their experiences entitled Boom Chicago Presents the 30 Most Important Years in Dutch History. It also contains a foreword written by our very own Seth Meyers. We're joined today by all three to discuss the improv group's origins, how Seth found his way to Amsterdam, and some of the stories that didn't make the book. Now here's my conversation with Andrew, Pep, and Seth. Hi, everyone. I am so happy to be joined today by 3 special guests. First up, 2 authors of a new book entitled Boom Chicago Presents the 30 Most Important Years in Dutch History. First, we have Andrew Moskos.
Hello.
And Pep Rosenfeld.
Hi, it's great to be here. Thanks.
And a man our listeners might be vaguely familiar with, Seth Meyers, who wrote the foreword for this very entertaining oral history, which will be published in July. Welcome back, Seth.
Ooh, vaguely. Don't mind if I do.
I wanted to ask first, Pep and Andrew, how many notes did you give Seth on the first draft of his foreword?
I think the deal was he will write it, but no notes, and that was a fair deal.
I think it also, I would have happily let them they could have changed whatever they wanted, and I would not have probably
noticed because you're not going to read
it. I'm not going to read my own foreword.
The book covers 30 years of the history of Boom Chicago, which you guys co-founded in Amsterdam in the early 90s. I want to talk about the book and what it was like to relive all these stories, but first, putting the book together. Whose idea was this? Was it more joyful than you anticipated, more arduous? What was the process like?
It was kind of joyful, I would say.
It was both joyful and arduous, but I would say it's definitely more joyful.
Yeah. So we had a friend of ours from high school, Matt Deal, who's also an author, and he has been pushing us for years to write a book. So it's certainly his idea, but the process of writing it was a lot of fun. I mean, we are writers ourselves, so it's writing a book was just a small step.
And it's funny because Matt did most of the interviews, because a big part of the book is sort of an oral history of Boom Chicago, told in the words of a lot of alumni, including Seth. And Matt did those interviews, but then it was such a delight for us to read the interviews afterwards and hear what people said about their Boom experience. It was great.
Seth is one of the many people you interviewed. When you asked people to participate, did you ask them or did Matt ask them to talk about certain subjects? Like, how did that, and Seth, you can chime in too, how did that interview process go from all of your perspectives?
I'm not gonna lie, I'm curious what Seth's point of view was, how it went down for him. But
yeah, well, so Matt, who I've been lucky enough to know for a long time, and I should clarify for our listeners, so Boom Chicago is a place I went right after college, and I spent 2 years in Amsterdam working at this improv comedy theater. It really was the beginning of everything for me, and an incredibly essential part of my growth, and I got to meet all these amazing people, including Pep and Andrew. And so Matt reached out and said, these guys are going to want to make this book for the 25-year anniversary. And I will say Matt was lovely. When he asked specific things, do you remember this? Do you remember that? It was so fun to talk about him. He did have a few too many. I feel my thesis is Boom Chicago changed not just comedy but drama for the world. And I would say, all right, Matt, it had a lot of influence, but let's be a little careful at how we frame it all.
Right, I was worried he was going to be like, would you say, Seth, that without Boom Chicago you wouldn't be funny at all? Like, no, don't ask him that. He's a very funny fella.
I think that the really impressive thing, and what I would hope readers would take away from this book, is how it was a really small organization that was filled with people who went on to do big things. It didn't have the infrastructure of a Second City, and it didn't have the sort of cultural significance of, say, an SNL. It was a really small theater in Amsterdam, and over the course of 30 years, a lot of people have left and done things that, I would say at this point the whole world knows. Not that Late Night with Seth Meyers has much of an international footprint, but certainly, the films of Jordan Peele or a show like Ted Lasso certainly do.
You do have a bit of appeal. You're sort of an Amsterdam adjunct celebrity because you have a passion for Amsterdam. So your stuff gets covered here in the Dutch press, actually.
It's very nice when I get a tiny side clipping from one of the Dutch newspapers.
The clippings are big. The newspaper itself is tiny.
That's true.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think also in contrast with other theaters, because Pep and I have been so active from the beginning, and Saskia, our third partner, we have our, we're close to the actors. We were in the show ourselves 5 days a week for a long time, so we don't just have sort of like we own the theater and they're the actors relationship. We've been in the trenches, and I think that's why we have such good friendships with a lot of our actors as well too, because there's no other theater where the creative team is the owners and the creative team themselves are on stage.
Well, the thing that I'll say about that, it is a total parallel to people who say who would take over for Lorne when he leaves SNL. And I do think people forget that sometimes these institutions survive because there is someone who runs them that has the underlying taste that has been the thread that has made it a consistent place for, in your case, 30 years, in Lorne's case, 50 years. But, obviously there are going to be levels where the show's maybe better than it was. And then, it just goes, there's peaks and valleys. But I think if you don't have one person who runs it, then it stops being unique.
Well, I think that comes through in the book, certainly as a reader of it and not knowing any of the history. But I'd love to just start with, or get on with, the idea for Boom Chicago, which came from the two of you guys, young men traveling through Europe after graduation, slightly maybe influenced by some substances. Can you kind of set the scene for people as to just how this all transpired?
Yeah, well, we always loved Amsterdam. We were traveling, doing a European tour, and when we came to Amsterdam, we fell in love with the city and we wanted to move there. And no, it's not for the reason you think. It was for the drugs. And we actually were high in a coffee shop and had the best stoner idea ever, which was quit our jobs, move to Amsterdam, and start an English language comedy show. And it worked.
Yeah, I just want to say that I think the key was that we had a pen with us and wrote down the idea. So like to any young people out there considering doing drugs, I would just say, you do the drugs, but just make sure you write your ideas down, because half of them will be terrible, 1/4 will be illegible, but 1/4 might just, be something.
In Dutch, we've got these coasters in Holland, like they're thick. It's not like cocktail napkins that goes under a drink. So it's great for writing down ideas.
The amount of times in the 2 years I was there that Andrew said, I have a great idea, and it was on the back of one of these, like I guess like corky almost. They feel like, and like a Heineken cork coaster that he would turn over. And I'm like, it doesn't actually sell as a great idea when you're flipping over a beer coaster. I clearly know where you got this idea. I should also say, I do, because I feel like when people hear, like, we quit our jobs, like, they were barely jobs.
Seth, I was an early childhood literacy specialist at a corporate nonprofit.
Seth, I was an early evening Italian food waiter.
Well, when you guys sobered up and approached the Dutch government about this, you talk about this story in the book, and the tourism board, they were not exactly supportive, I think is an appropriate word.
What's the opposite of supportive?
So, yeah, we wrote them, and we said, hey, here's our idea. We want to open up a comedy show. We want it to be good enough that it gets reviewed in the arts pages of newspapers. Newspapers were a thing that used to come out every day.
But you still have them, right? There's still a robust newspaper, Steve. Still robust newspapers in Holland, right?
Yeah, actually, there are still robust 10 daily newspapers still, and so it's a literate place. They get thinner. They got thinner over the years. But so we wrote the city and the tourism office and said, here's our idea. What do you think? And they wrote us back quickly by fax, because it was 1993. And the fax said, your idea will not work, which is a pretty pessimistic start for a tourism office.
But they went further. They fleshed it out.
Oh, they fleshed it out. The Dutch do not want to see a show in English. The tourists do not want to see a show at all. You will need subsidy to theater in the Netherlands. You will not get any subsidy, so think twice about your plans. So they were right about we never got subsidy.
To be fair, I think does it count as subsidies the help we got during COVID? Because then that would be the final domino of that letter falling over.
But no, we came. It worked. We framed the fax, and it's up in our bar right now. And 30 years later, still having fun.
And the woman who wrote the fax to us has come to the show and had a great time. And we bought her a drink and showed her own letter up on the wall. And I like to think that was a moving moment for her.
It was a moving moment for us.
Yeah,
I really wanted to see
was.
what she said, and it was nice that she liked it.
That's amazing. I love that. Seth, you spoke about how much influence this had on your career. Can you talk about namely how you heard of it. Like, how did it come across your radar when you were graduating from school?
Yeah, so it was real early days of the theater. I think it had only been 2 or 3 seasons that you guys had done, and it wasn't year-round when I started. But my dear college friend and close friend today, a former late-night writer, Peter Gross, he basically saw an audition notice for it. He had talked to somebody who'd done it. He was far more adventuresome in spirit than I was and thought we should go audition for it. And the other thing I should note is that Pep and Andrew both went to Northwestern, which is where Pete and I went. Pep was in Meow, which was the improv troupe at Northwestern that I was also in. So in a weird way, it was a tailor-made audition for Pete and my skill set, because you could tell, oh, the person who's putting this together has done Meow and we've done Meow. And so it was a course of 3 days of auditioning for it. And it never, in the back of my head, it just never occurred to me that we might get the job until we got the job. And then it was very funny because Pete was the one who thought it was a good idea. And then immediately he was like, I got this girlfriend and I don't know if it's a good idea. And I was all guns blazing to go. And in the end, Pete went as well. But I didn't have a passport at the time. I'd never left the country. And so it was a giant leap of faith that was really, I mean, incredible. I was incredibly rewarding. When I look back at the bigger swings I've taken in my life, that one certainly counts.
Seth and Pete both had a great audition.
I remember they did a scene in the audition involving an enormous cheese wheel, right? And they were rolling a big cheese wheel. That I do remember from your audition.
I remember a big cowboy song that Seth sang.
Really?
Yeah. Do you remember that,
Do you remember that, Seth?
I don't have any memory of that. I know that I've been told in the years since to stop it with my cowboy songs. I don't see you as the cowboy song guy. I'm not going to say who said it.
And then, Seth, you quit your job, too. It was kind of similar to mine, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I said, I think what it was in the end was they said, you don't actually have to quit. You just tell us you can't make your next year's worth of shifts at the Twisted Lizard. And I will say, when I left Boom Chicago, I came back and started working at the Twisted Lizard again. And that was what I like to call the worst time of my life.
In the book, the majority of the alumni talk so lovingly about the Dutch National Football Club and how many Boom alums became diehard fans, including Brendan Hunt and Jason Sudeikis, obviously, who created and starred in Ted Lasso. Can you guys talk about how that took over in terms of the fandom and how you all became such devoted supporters?
This is really Saskia, who's not here, which is Andrew's wife and sort of the third leg of the tripod that keeps Boom Chicago up and running. But she is Dutch, and she loves football. And the first World Cup I was there for was the 1998 World Cup, and the Dutch team was very good, made it to the semifinals, and it was quite dramatic. And you just watch the whole city sort of turn orange, and everybody's in a really good mood all the time. And I love Dutch people, but they're not in a really good mood all the time. So when that happens, it's hard not to think like, oh, this is a wave I want to ride. And it was just really fun. And mostly, I think at that time, I mean, obviously it's different now, but almost all of us were American sports fans who had not fallen in love with soccer yet.
Right.
And so that was kind of our introduction to how wonderful it was.
Yeah, our theater at the time, too, was on the Leidseplein, which is a big square where a lot of people go to watch these games. And when Ajax or when the Dutch national team wins, there's a balcony in front of the big theater there, and they raise the trophy in front of thousands of fans. So it was not only a great season for football and a great set of years, it was also the place where football was celebrated, football meaning soccer, and that was an extra piece that the celebrations were sort of part of the Boom Chicago experience as well.
I would add just two things. One is, 'cause Seth, with you saying like the whole city's in a good mood, I would say yes until the inevitable moment that the Dutch team collapses. And then it's so crushing. It's so miserable. It's the worst.
Yeah.
And we've seen it live once on, well, not live, but we've seen it on Seth's show, which is still one of my favorite moments from the show, except that it involved the Dutch team losing.
I rewatched it, and it was very recently, and it was very painful and real.
Yeah, it was drama on your show.
Was that when you threw the iPad?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I remember that too, yeah.
I'm very good at not responding to people. I feel like a robust, happy life is one that never responds to people on social media. But a few people I remember after that because I posted that video on Twitter. They're like, must be nice to be able to break an iPad. And what I wanted to say is, you.
I'm not a sports fan really at all, or I never was. And then I did the same thing that you did, Seth, which was a show with Brendan Hunt. But yours was only part about football, but mine was totally about the World Cup one year. And the bit was Brendan knows everything about soccer because he does, and I knew nothing about anything because I didn't. And we did this show during the World Cup, and we would then show the games after the show. And I mean, the show was a flop because it turns out that if you're a football fan, you don't really want to watch a comedy show, and if you're a comedy show, you don't want to watch the football. But I just learned a little bit every day from Brendan from watching the games, and now I can't miss a national game.
I should say a really funny thing I think is very funny is that these guys wanted to write this book was originally written at the 25th anniversary, and I think they thought, oh, that's when you write the book, because at this point, like, it's not everything great people have done. Like, I feel like they've done it, and then like the minute the book came out, Ted Lasso came out, and they were like,
5 years too early.
5 years too early. So now this book has, and again, it's not just Brendan and Jason, it's also Joe Kelly, who was out of Boom Chicago. And I should note, I think that I should say John and Andrew were going to be guests on the show in a couple of weeks, and due to the fact that we're not doing shows because of the writer's strike, they will not be on. But I think you guys would have been if you count me, you would have been the 11th and 12th Boom alum who's appeared on the show.
Wow, that's
so
phenomenal.
Can you name, I'm going to give you me, can you name the other 9?
Oh, gosh.
Are we counting Pete?
Yes. Pete counts. That's now you need 8.
Amber?
7.
Tarek?
Tarek?
Yeah, he's been on the show. He did bits.
I forgot about Tarek. I thought he was only Amber, so I'm going to give you, you still have 7.
Okay, Jordan, of course.
Yep, 6.
Ike, Kay,
5,
Brendan,
4,
Matt Jones.
3.
The other 2 are, one is obvious.
Yeah, one is obvious that you're missing, and
Josh.
Josh,
yeah,
yep, and one more. And I'm going to give it to you. Joe Kelly was on via
Joe
Zoom.
Kelly, yeah.
Also, Carice was on.
Oh,
She's
Carice.
not technically Boom Chicago, though.
Oh, okay.
She was just one of these really, the hanger-on type. We had a lot of Dutch celebs who just wanted to be around the Boom Chicago heat.
It's so funny. She's become perhaps the leading female actor in the Netherlands. And when we kind of say, oh yeah, she used to date Josh and hung out a lot and would get high on couches with us. People are like, what? Carice van Houten? Yeah, we know her that long.
Yeah,
My
Carice van Houten
relationship-
of Game of Thrones.
Melisandre in Game of Thrones.
Yes.
I went to Burger King once with her and Josh, and we were super high. I'm not sure if this is a good story to tell. And we started doing bits with each other, and our thing became, oh, we don't understand each other when we do bits, and that was our relationship for a long time.
One of my favorite things she says in the book is how she had, like, Dutch people don't date the way Americans date, and so Josh was sort of her first boyfriend in the American sense, hand-holding, flowers, and then one night they both got high and were watching some documentary about American serial killer, and she was so stoned she thought, oh no, it's Josh, because it was all one of those like Dateline-y, like, it was the love that was too good to be true. And she was like, oh my God, this guy did everything Josh did. Flowers, hand-holding, it's all the classic signs.
I think that's a good segue to ask Andrew and Pep, this community of actors and performers who developed this love for Dutch culture, including the Dutch national team too. But what do you think are the most common things that maybe stay with Boom Chicago alumni in terms of the connection to Amsterdam or love for country? What do you hear most from people that they miss or that they want to come back to?
I mean, it might be the Efteling.
The Efteling is a great amusement park in the Netherlands. It's kind of the Dollywood of the Netherlands, which is it's super credible and a world-class park that's a little bit smaller. It's in nature and it's a little bit more regional feeling. Everyone loves the Efteling.
I didn't realize, though, I read, and you will know if this is true or not, Andrew, the second most attended European amusement park to Disneyland
Paris.
Yeah. Euro Disney. Right? So it's small, but it's real deal.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. It's only small compared to Disney World, but it's certainly a real deal.
To me, the thing about the Efteling, and it's such a Dutch thing about it, is that whereas most American amusement parks, they sort of tear down everything and then build the park. Here, there was this forest, and they left the forest and sort of build around it, and it's just this gorgeous, park with awesome rides in there as well.
I think alumni also miss bike riding because that is really a part of Amsterdam. Is you just bike everywhere, and it's just your way you get around. I think that's nice. Even though the weather isn't always great, there's certainly a cafe terrace outdoor culture, which is nice. And when the weather is good, everyone just enjoys it.
When the weather's good, somehow nobody's employed and everybody is sitting on a terrace drinking rosé. It's really weird. I don't know what their jobs are. I know what mine is, and it allows me to drink rosé at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, but I don't know about everybody else. It's weird.
It does. I felt like the city always expanded to your mood and the weather. And if you were having a good time, like that city stays open late in a way that is not aggressive or grimy. You can just have I feel like I've never had more 20-hour sort of, party days where the day starts and then the next thing you know, it's 5 a.m. and that, especially in the summer when it's already getting light again. I remember one of the first, and to this day, maybe the coolest thing Pep ever did. We were on a boat ride, and remember there was a bakery you could pull the boat up next to and get like the first croissants of the day.
Yeah.
And great. It was really just amazing. I remember that was like Pete and I, our introduction to Amsterdam was let's go on a midnight or whatever, probably like 3 a.m. boat ride. And the next thing we know, we're pulling up on like the window onto the canal and somebody just
and he would
hands
really sneak out with his undershirt on.
Yeah, it was certainly the most like a drug deal I've ever seen purchasing croissants.
Did you guys along the way at any point, maybe when you look up at that fax from that Dutch woman in the government, did you ever think this result was possible 30 years later to have this be your life, that you created this thing that is obviously such a success?
What I always say is I think I did not. I thought, wow, this is going to be a fantastic summer project in 1993. And I think deep down, Andrew thought the opposite.
Yeah, I thought it was going to work. I thought it was going to work. What I did not predict is that I would be middle-aged one day. That was inconceivable.
I will say that I studied abroad in college, and the thing to do was go to Amsterdam and obviously eat space cakes, but go see Boom Chicago. And that was in the earlier, maybe when, right after Seth left, but early days of 2000s. And my friends were all doing that when they went to Amsterdam.
That's pretty fantastic.
We like your friends.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you guys, all three of you, many of the stories in the book, there's so many funny anecdotes. Some include drugs in some capacity, and I'm sure there are some that maybe were inappropriate for the book on some level, but was there anything that you really wished made the cut that you either couldn't keep in for specific reasons or just didn't have the space to have in there?
The editor's cut.
There was a whole chapter written in the voice of Germany, and it was hilarious, and it was cut. It was an awesome chapter. That's what killed. That was my darling that was cut. Seth, I'm going to send you a copy of the Germany chapter.
I don't know if it's in the book, but we were talking about the Efteling, and this is one of my favorite Shame on Ike stories, of which there are legion. But somebody brought a football, like an American football, which is already just a terrifying shape to Dutch people. And we were at Efteling, and we're kind of throwing the football back and forth. And one of my favorite things about Ike is he looks athletic and he's not. And so he went to throw the ball to somebody, and he threw the worst pass I've ever seen. It went flying, and it was going towards an old woman in a wheelchair who was just... And two things happened. Ike threw it, saw what was going to happen, turned his head and just walked away like he hadn't even been playing football. Like he immediately was building his own alibi. And my brother, God love him, who is the most important thing that ever happened to Ike, is that he met someone like my brother. Josh just went in a dead sprint and dove and just tapped the ball away. Didn't catch it, but just tapped it away from hitting this Dutch woman right in the face. And then the whole bus ride home, I was like, you just walked away. He's like, Sophie, I don't want to... look, we could talk about this as much as you want. That's not how I saw
it. Because I didn't see it at all because I was walking away and not looking.
Yeah. I don't know. Does everybody see where their ball goes?
So in addition to the book coming out in July, you guys are coming to the U.S. You have a couple of events. Can you tell us about those and where people can find you?
Yes, absolutely. We've got 3 big stops with nice events. They're not just book readings. They're things with performances and a lot of alumni as well. We start in New York, June 21st at Le Poisson Rouge. Seth is going to host it. Amber Ruffin, Tarek Davis, Holly Walker's other alumni who are based in New York. Then the next day, Chicago on the 22nd of June at I.O. Pep and I are going to be guests, monologuists, telling stories at the Armando Diaz. And then in Los Angeles on the 29th at Gold Diggers in East Hollywood, Ike Barinholtz will be hosting, Colton Dunn, others. Brendan Hunt will be performing.
Yeah, it's going to be a crazy show, too.
In his band character, Elvis Prestello. That has not happened in years, so that's a big event at Gold Diggers. On the 29th, hoped we see people there.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Well, congratulations on this book, you guys. It was so much fun to read, and it will be published in early July, but is available for pre-order now, so everyone go do that. And Seth, Pep, Andrew, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Jenks.
This has been Late Night Lit. My thanks to Seth Meyers, Mike Shoemaker, Andrew Moskos, Pep Rosenfeld, Jay Johnson, Ross Leupold, and Rafael Ajuelos. Our theme music was written and performed by the 8G Band. For Late Night with Seth Meyers, I'm Sarah Jenks Daly. Thank you for listening and happy reading.